Hi, everybody. I'm Greg Fishel, and at the 50th annual meeting for the NWA. And I mentioned earlier I thought you might be interested in hearing from some people that have been important in my life. And this is one of the big ones right here. His name is John McLaughlin. And I guess maybe just give a brief summary of like where you grew up and how you got into broadcasting and all that.
How much time do we have, Greg? How long are these videos?
The Reader's Digest condensed.
Yeah. Well, I was a weather nerd, much like you, a very scientific person growing up. And I actually, when I was a teenager, was building little homemade computers.
Wow.
And took a little round device. It was called the Sager Weathercaster. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
It was a circular slide rule with weather forecasts. So you would put in the conditions, whether the wind was backing, veering, pressure rising, falling, and it would give you a basic forecast. So I took that information and built a simple logic computer, just if-then statements with little slide
Oh my gosh.
for yes or no. And in August of 1976, I came downstairs. I've been up in the attic because I wanted the best view, 360 degrees of all potential weather around the little town in Iowa I was in. And I came downstairs and I said, Mom, there's going to be a tornado today. And I went through the scientific explanation of why.
Right.
And she goes, Johnny, you shouldn't lie. And I said, no, I'm serious. And I walked to the west window of our kitchen downstairs in our little house. And I said, and there it is now.
Wow.
And I put my mom to the window and she says, oh my goodness, kids, we're going to die. But it was that event that just ingrained in me that this is what I want to do. So I got a passion for not just, the forecasting part of it, but the, getting people out of harm's way, and really specialized in radar systems that we can use to give people the warning we never had back in 1976.
Now, was KCCI your first station?
I actually worked at an ABC affiliate in college at Iowa State called WI.
Okay.
It was partially owned by the university. Worked with a meteorologist named Larry Cosgrove.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And Larry was the first person that we had an old 74C surplus C-band radar there with a small, like 8-foot antenna.
Okay.
So it wasn't a great radar, but he was the first one to show me what a vault looks like on radar, what became known as, bounded echo region.
Right.
And we would see it on the radar, then we'd run up the stairs to the top of the TV studio and look outside. And he let me, rip the warnings off the wire and put them on the air. So developed a passion by then. But you know what Larry said? McLaughlin, he said, get out of radar or get out of weather and do something else, because the station treated him so poorly.
Oh, wow.
And it kind of soured me on it for a while, but I came back to it. And a few years later, I'd worked for Channel 5, Channel 8, and started writing papers. And I saw him at a conference in Salt Lake City, and he came up to me and said, McLaughlin, and he never could pronounce my last name. So I thought I told you to get out of weather, and he goes, I'm glad you didn't listen to me. So anyway, spent 31 years at the CBS station in Des Moines. We built 3 different radar systems during that time, and went from a station that their only reputation in weather was a personality-driven approach, and went to a total science and personality, where we brought real equipment and changed the face of weather in Iowa.
And when we bought our radar, the first one at WRAL back, I think it was 1998 or something like that, the news director came to me and said, there's going to be a radar conference in Des Moines, and I think you ought to go since we just bought the radar.
Right.
And so went up there, and that was the first time I had met you. And I remember, thinking to myself, it's like, my gosh, this guy knows so much about radar, and it was intimidating at first.
And it wasn't just, it was a passion for learning, but also I wanted a passion to share that information.
Right.
So instead of just keeping it to ourselves, what we were learning, I said, we have to have this conference. So we ended up forming an NWA chapter, National Weather Association, which we're here now, and getting that local conference chapter, which grew to about 300 people within a few years, and continues to this day as a very popular conference, especially for students and broadcasters.
And then from that point, I remember this, is that I guess after a couple of years of attending that thing, all of a sudden I'm on the air one night, and I had watched you and other people do the street level stuff and so forth.
Yep.
And all of a sudden there's a tornado warning, and it's confirmed, it's on the ground, out just outside of Raleigh. And all of a sudden it's like, it's my turn. It's time for me to do this.
Yep.
And I remember the news director at that time saying that every TV station has its defining moments, and that was, one of them.
I would tell people, you don't get to choose the moment chooses you.
Yeah.
And you can either be ready or not, and you were ready.
Try to. And then the other thing is that after that, you linked up with Les Lemon, who was known as the father of NexRad.
Right. Yes.
And then you had all sorts of training conferences in Huntsville, down here at Barron. And by the way, they're the company that makes the radar that
we both ended up with. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I just remember learning so much, and a lot of times people say, oh yeah, you go to those conferences just to drink and party and have fun. It's like, we actually work.
We never stopped working. It's like, where's the fun? When are we going to go do something fun? No, it was, I remember the first time Les came in, and he actually was cutting our lunch breaks down because we had so much stuff to cover. And he was a taskmaster, but we learned so much. And then when he got involved, more on the broadcast side, it just shows you the value of mentorship and having somebody, that you looked up to. You read his papers of Doswell and Burgess on, tornadoes and supercells on radar. And then here's the guy, and it actually, becomes a friend and a colleague and someone that you can pick up the phone and talk to about the things you saw or send him the data. He was always saying, send me that. We're clipping images to get his opinion on things. And that's what this organization, the NWA, is.
Now, did you ever feel initially when you first met him that he had a stereotype that, oh, you're one of those TV guys and you don't really get into science?
I was afraid of that.
Okay.
But I did not let fear stop me from talking to him.
Okay.
And the first thing he said is, well, it's a C-band, right? It attenuates more than the Weather Service radar. And I said, yes, I understand that. He goes, okay. And then we just moved on into getting into the science. Okay.
So,
and
go ahead.
I had studied radar a lot before I got to meet him. And I actually had read his papers. He wrote a paper in Iowa about a tornado up in Garner, Iowa. I think it was in 1994. He was at a wedding and had some relatives up there. And people said, hey, Les, we're going to have a tornado today. And he goes, oh, this is not the kind of weather we have tornadoes from. But it ended up being a day where several landspout tornadoes formed.
Oh.
And actually picked up a Cadillac and threw it, I think, when he's at the wedding. But, it led to more research on what happens in that lowest level of the atmosphere near the ground, those boundary layer interactions and vertical stretching. And so even the guy who was the master of radar learned something in Iowa back in 1994. And we continued. Once our radar was operational, we saw things that, we hadn't learned about in college. We all heard mid-level mesocyclones, and then it gradually cascades down. And we saw what Les saw, that we're seeing things develop very close to the ground or at the ground, and then vertically stretching into a developing cumulonimbus. So lots of cool things.
And I think even that, I remember there was a time when they said, oh, look at the 0 to 3 kilometer storm relative velocity, and then it became the 0 to 1 kilometer.
Right.
Because, a lot of things people don't realize about radar is when you get too far away from it, you really can't sample the atmosphere at the altitude you need to see those things.
But Greg, I thought the Earth was flat. You mean the Earth doesn't curve away from the radar beam like we said it is?
Don't get me started. Now, do you mind if I bring this up, and if you don't want to talk about it, feel free to say no. But you were going strong at KCCI for a long time, and then something really, really unfortunate happened to you.
Yeah, I ended up getting autoimmune disease from repeated exposure to problems with mold in our TV studio. And I just kept breathing in over the years, and I would start to cough and feel uncomfortable, shortness of breath. I had to go behind the weather set and do a nebulizer treatment before I do the weather. And it finally got to the point where I just couldn't breathe. And I walked basically across the street to the emergency room at the nearby hospital and got a lung x-ray, and the results from that kind of changed my life. So I had to get out of television, had to recover. It took several years to get my health back. And you felt like, God came down and smacked you on the head. But really what God was doing, I think, was giving me opportunities to do other things and move into some other areas.
Right.
And it turned out to be a good thing because, the politics and everything got so divisive. I think it was a good time maybe to be out of the broadcast studios with all the things that happened back then. This was like 2015, 2016. But it's led to other opportunities. I'm still deeply involved in weather. I'm here doing a scholarship that's going to be available for college students in my name to basically do what Les did for us, try to mentor the next generation into having a passion for radar and severe storms. And I've always flown airplanes, and I had a chance to come back and fly a jet for a local company, and so that's been a lot of fun, and certainly put your high altitude meteorology to play.
Yes.
Play doing that every day.
And you've been, past president of this organization?
Yeah, I was on the broadcast committee and then the tape review committee, and just worked, a counselor, and then president-elect and president. And it was actually Les Lemon who came to me and said, I think you should be president of the NWA. We need a broadcaster to show that, broadcasters are qualified to be, a science-minded person to help lead this organization.
Okay. Now, if I'm remembering correctly, you were also head of the AMS broadcast board.
Yes, you were correct.
And I came on the year that you were the head of that,
Right.
one of them. And it wasn't like 2 weeks later or whatever, it's like, how would you like to chair the committee to develop the certification exam?
Right, and that was actually a good thing because there was a lot of discussion where folks were kind of ranking various colleges, and I know you went to Penn State, and that's obviously a top school. But I went to Mississippi State University for
Right.
the meteorology part, and I would tell people, it's not the college, but the knowledge. It's
Right.
not necessarily, where you went, but what you did with the information you obtained.
Yes.
So how do we level it across the board? And instead of like saying, well, if you went to this school, you're not qualified to get a certified broadcast meteorologist seal. And we said, well, we need a test.
Yeah.
And so you actually had to take a significant exam, which I know you took very early on. But we developed a test, included satellite and radar and climate stuff. And it turned out to be very popular, and it just kind of equalized the playing field. If you're capable of passing that test and you did good work on air, then you
Yeah.
became a certified broadcast meteorologist.
And prior to that, all you had to do was have, 3 good air shows
Right,
in a
yeah,
row.
exactly. Send them some good hair checks. Yeah, now you actually had to show you had a knowledge of science.
Right, exactly.
And I appreciate your involvement in that.
Oh, well, that was an amazing experience. I know, like Jim Jaggers and Lisa Spencer
Right.
and I went out to Boulder,
Yep.
and they have a comet program out there, which is like, basically meteorological education. And, we met with all sorts of people out there, and we had to come up with 600 questions
Yeah.
because the exam was 100 questions, but we wanted it to be fresh.
pool,
Right. And so that was...
Remember, I took on radar and satellite, and I
Right.
said, Greg, you're doing the modeling, you're doing all the hard stuff.
Oh my gosh! Anything else you want to add? And one thing before I forget is that the Mississippi State thing was something that came along. When did that start? Like in the 80s?
It was in the 80s. Yeah.
Okay.
I went through it in the early 90s.
Okay, so I'm going to be real honest, and I've told John this, and I'm not blowing sunshine up his skirt, but
Do I wear a skirt, Greg?
but it didn't involve as much math as if you went like to Penn State or Wisconsin or something like that, right?
Yeah. So it had math,
Right.
but it already had broken it out into English, where this means this, this means this,
Right.
this means this, and here's what you do with it.
Yep.
So it was almost like simplifying calculus and turning it into, the equations turned into like an English problem.
Right.
That made it very easy for people to get through it.
And and I had one of these attitudes, and I hate to admit this, but I did. But at the time, it's like, well, if I had to suffer through all that calculus at Penn State, then everybody should have to do that.
Right.
And then when I met John, it was what really turned me around on that. And like you just said in another way, that it's not necessarily the program you go through, but it's the fact that you take the opportunity you've been granted and you take the ball and run with it. And that's exactly what you did.
I think as good broadcasters, as meteorologists, and I'm also a pilot and flight instructor, we need to be eternal students. So it's not like, well, I got my degree from OU or Penn State or whatever, and look at me. If you don't take that opportunity to take that knowledge and keep growing
Yep.
through your career, you're really doing yourself a disservice, and you're doing a disservice to all those you're trying to serve.
Exactly. Anything else you want to add?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to be on your little podcast.
Absolutely, and this is a lifelong friend right here, and it's been a while since we've seen each other, so it's really nice to catch up. So.
Congratulations on being back with us.
Absolutely. Take care, John.
All right.
We'll see you soon. All right.